everything's coming up greener.
Here's Harold Matthews. He is
The Garden Doctor. The Garden Doctor.
Hello and welcome to the Garden Doctor Show.
Hello.
With Mr. and Mrs. Garden Doctor right here, Harold and Michelle Matthews.
That's me.
Yeah, that's this. This is the one over here on this side.
Yes.
You may have noticed that the brush is gone.
Look at this.
Yeah, it's a.
We should have done it on TV live, but we were
Actually,
at a party.
we did it at a pretty good sized reunion.
We did a family party.
Yeah, and everybody was gathered around, and they said, "When are you going to get rid of that stuff?" And I said, "How about right now?" And,
Well, we did.
and we did. Listen
Well, your cousin, who looks an awful lot like you and has a shaved head, he set up a chair in the middle of the living room
and
in
he's
front of
very
everybody.
qualified to
and
do it.
off
He's a
goes.
butcher. He's a butcher. So
Yeah,
you know.
he's a meat cutter, but I have something kind of creepy to show. And it's only creepy now because it's unattached to anything. But look, this was his ponytail that was braided, and we cut it off, so I'm saving
You notice
it
how
for...
brown it is? There's no gray in there hardly at all.
They can't see it close enough.
Yeah,
There's
well,
lots of gray in
no,
there,
no,
honey.
no. There's very, very little gray
But
in there.
not too many split ends, and
Yeah,
actually it's a pretty good sized ponytail. I figured he might want to reattach it right here,
Yeah, there you
maybe,
go,
or
there
something.
you go.
I don't know. I don't
Actually,
know
what
why
I
I'm
wanted to
keeping
do
it,
was
but-
shave one side of my face and the other side of my head
would
because
not
we
allow
were
it.
going to a concert. And I wanted to go a little bit
No,
unique, you know,
we're not
or have a
doing that.
ponytail coming out the side of my head. She wouldn't
Unique
allow
is
that.
one thing, but that's going a little too
that's going a
far.
little bit
But
too
yeah, I'm keeping it for whatever reason. I don't know.
I wanted to tell you that we really are getting into doing some videos for the show and going around to people's yards.
Yeah, and that's been fun.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. But this thing right here, if you see this
It's
little
too small to
piece
even see
right
it on
here,
television.
Yeah, okay, it disappears right there.
That's
all right?
everything
It's
your
gone.
whole life, right in that
Yeah,
little chip.
and so we take these videos and we take the chip out and we put it in a little plastic thing, which is no bigger than this thing. And then you label that and then you put that in an envelope, which is not much bigger. And then
he puts it in this pocket, which guess what? Goes through the laundry. So these things have been washed many a time.
we did 15. Well, not really. We did. I think this
We did a
time.
few.
Well, this time was 5, and I can't find any of them. They're out there.
Started over.
They're really there. So we're gonna try to get a
We
hold of those.
tried really hard, but
And they were good too. The sound quality was good because you can, always talk about the fish that got away. But and we're going to have one for you today in the
But they're
middle of the
nice
show.
because we can go outdoors. We can go to different people, local people in Connorsville yards. We can show unique plantings, different things they've done, and record it and talk about it, and then show them to you. But unfortunately, we only have a little bit to show to you today. But we do have an outtake for
And we're
you.
going to try to do some more photography work too out in the yards. And I know I've said that before. We have taken some pictures.
Yep.
And we're going to try to share them with you now.
And there won't be too many grandkids. Hopefully, it'll be more about
there'll be
plants this
grandkids.
time. But okay.
That worked out pretty
I
good.
know, I like that.
This is a broken record, but we're back in a drought.
I know, but let's argue about that because up until now, they have kept telling us that, and it's true, we have not experienced until today a 90-degree temperature, so it's been great weather. There has been sporadic rain. However, they showed the map yesterday that shows the drought areas, and we have now entered into the drought areas. Now, this time last year, we had been on that map for about 2-3 months already. We have just now entered into it, and you think all is going fine, but we are 3 inches below.
We are not
right
only
now.
are we 3 inches below, but it's all coming at once. Okay, if you get a ton of rain like we did sometimes, and we got some good spaced out rain too this year, but we got a lot of rain all at once. That puts us up the inches that we're looking for. But now we're getting all of the drought, all of the lack of rain all at once. Now, I don't know about your particular house, but there was 3 times in the last storms that we received when it would rain on the east side of town, not the west.
Oh,
the
we
north
got
side of town,
nothing
not the south.
at our house.
Connorsville, but not
Well,
Knolltown.
you called me. You said, "Is there any rain at the house?" I'm driving through puddles in town, and we hadn't seen a drop at the house.
So if you just because it says on the news that we're not in the drought doesn't mean that your particular house doesn't need addressing.
But the truth is, we've gone this far without harping on that topic. However, now it is beginning, and you kind of need to get ahead of it in your own yard, or you will
Please
have
give
these
your
drought
plants
conditions. Yes.
a good, solid
Good
drink
soaking.
of water.
Waller? They want some Waller. Have some Waller.
And don't ignore your lawn. Even though and I mentioned this before, but even though the lawn has gone dormant, you still don't want it to go dead. So you need to give it a drink of water. You
And I
don't
don't
want
know the
enough to
difference.
wake it up. Okay, waking it up is 1 inch of water per week. Will keep your lawn green, and you're going to have to maintain it because you can't wake it up, put it to sleep, wake it up, put it to sleep. But a lawn that goes dormant will never get brittle. It'll just be
Okay.
brown or brownish, but it's never brittle. It doesn't start breaking and
It's
cracking.
not plush and green, but it's not crispy either.
Right, it's just dormant, and it's a little
that's okay,
discolored.
right?
Yeah, dormant is great, but it has to have a little rain. We're not in an arid environment, so we have to have a little rain. And so instead of 1 inch of water per week, you want an inch of water about every 2.5 weeks. Will maintain unless it gets hot. Then you're going to have to go back
Well,
to
they're
about.
calling for a heat wave. We had a 90-degree day today, and they're saying that's the beginning of this upcoming heat
And
wave.
it's after we're going into the drought. So
Mm-hmm.
this is very, very dangerous, and it's a very crucial time to water any new plants, any new trees. I feel so bad for Rushville. They did such a beautiful job of re-landscaping that main drag over there. And
Right before a drought.
well, that was last year, and then they lost some trees, but
Oh.
they got water trucks out there, and they took care of their plants.
Well, that's good.
And Connorsville has a lot of new trees too, and it's difficult because now you got double the manpower to go out there and take care of it.
And
but
before,
no plant should be planted without a plan in place
For
to
water.
maintain it.
Yes.
Never should even be considered to be planted unless the money, the funds are in, and the plan is in place to maintain it.
Well, even in our own yard, if you water, you either have to pay a water bill or an electric bill to pump it. It's part of the cost of maintaining your beautiful plants. And while we're not on that topic, but we are live tonight, so make sure
We're live!
Yes, live show tonight. So give us a call, 825-3245, with any questions, comments. Give us a call.
And I have to send out an apology right away to the Constancers.
Uh-oh.
I got a summer fever. I don't know what's going
That
on.
would be Dick and Carolyn, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just not feeling very well. And they bagged up a bag full of apples for me.
Just for you.
And I love their apple tree. It's actually a Johnny Appleseed
Mm-hmm.
apple. It's a direct. It's not the true one. It came from cuttings off in a Johnny
But a
Appleseed apple.
descendant of-
Yeah, and it is fabulous for
And you never went and got
applesauce.
those?
No, and I got feeling bad, and I was tired, and I'm getting, I'm not old yet, but I'm
Yeah.
seeing that point. But anyway, and I apologize for that.
You're not over the hill, but you're at the top.
Yeah,
there,
I got to
close.
try to get out to their house because that is
All
the
right.
best applesauce apples in the area. And we're going to try to take some cuttings and reproduce that tree.
That would be awesome.
And we have a good apple tree at the house.
We do, and it is loaded with apples this year. Last year, my peach tree, my cherry tree, my apple tree, we had no fruit on any tree. I didn't know if it was the drought, what was doing it. We did discuss that. This year, I think we talked about it on the last show, we had a ton of peaches which the deer loved, and we only got a few
And they
of.
waited until they were perfectly ripe.
Perfectly ripe. I think we maybe got half a dozen peaches by the time
I went out
we
there
realized.
at night with a stick and was eating them.
You
Get away,
have
get
to.
away.
But it's loaded with apples right now. I'm waiting for them to get ripe. I actually bit into one the other day. They're not quite ready yet, but
Somebody called me the other day and they said, when do I know how to pick my fruit? Well, you pick it when it starts falling off, because when
That's when
the
it's
fruit
ripe.
is ripe, it falls off. And when it starts to fall off, then is when you
you
start
pick
picking.
the other ones.
Much of picking is picking up.
Are the ones on the ground okay? I
Yeah,
wondered about that.
now when they hit, they bounce, and you got to get them right away
Okay.
because of
But
insects.
check
and
for worms
They'll get
and-
bruised and whatnot. But if you keep it clean under there, you'll decrease your diseases and insects and bees. Bees are a major problem under an apple
Now
tree.
I have to say our apples on this tree are not the perfect, beautiful apple. They
No,
kind of
no,
have,
that-
but
because we
don't
never spray.
use insect
No.
spray. We don't,
don't-
use a lot of those
And we have
products.
a tent caterpillar.
Oh, wow,
One
that's
of
a
the
good
questions that came in was, what was that
Oh,
about?
it was about a tent caterpillar that was filled with bagworms.
No, a bag. Something about the person asked the question kind of in
It
an
was
interesting
funny.
way, and
Here, I have a giant tent of bagworms on my crabapple tree. I think these are the ones my father used to burn out, which is better because it has no chemicals, yes? What are the problems
Well-
with doing it this way, and how was it done? I don't know. Never
my
heard of that.
brother-in-law, Bing Rogers up in New Hampshire, decided, that's what his father did, so let's try this. So he went and got a broom. He set the broom on fire, and then he commenced to
Oh.
walk over to the tree. Well, that's what they used to do, is take a rag, and go
Okay.
around, and they would light all of these bagworms, and poof, there they go. Because it is kind of a cottony webbing.
So it's a
and-
controlled,
Well,
if you control it.
you would think so, but he had two very large tent caterpillars. By the way, they're not bagworms. A bagworm is not a tent caterpillar. Tent caterpillar is actually a tent. It's a caterpillar that the cocoon is inside the tent. They come out of that tent when they're mature. That protects them from the birds. That's the reason for the tent, and that way more of them can get to
Well,
maturity.
based on her question, could it be the tree has a bunch of bagworms and
No.
they happen to make a tent
No,
around some of them?
bagworms
No.
don't make a tent.
Well, no, I mean that there were
Once in a while they make a
bagworms,
little car and drive.
and the tent caterpillar made its tent, and it happened to include some bagworms. No.
No.
Okay.
No,
Just a
that's it.
thought. All right. Sorry.
But the burning is not a good idea.
So don't burn the bush.
But you can't spray them inside this tent. You have to rip the tent open to spray them. But the best way to do it is just to prune that tent business
Just
out
take the
while
whole
it's still
branch?
while they're still in the
Oh,
tent.
contained.
Put it in a Ziploc bag. Or in a bag and seal it up,
can
or
and
put it
burn
in a
it.
can or something, or burn it. Yes, and a lot of people make the mistake of picking insects off and then they throw them in the trash. Well, that doesn't do
Or
any
on
good.
the ground.
Yeah, they crawl out of the trash and right back to where they started from, or infest somebody else's tree. If you're going to pick things off or cut off a tent caterpillar, make sure you put it in a sealed environment so that it's going to suffocate, and then
Well,
then
that
they're
makes
gone.
sense. Makes sense to
Or
me.
feed them to your chickens. That's what my uncle.
Well, they're great for keeping ticks down, they claim, around your house
What
and
is?
in your dooryard. Chickens. That's
How do
what
we
I
get on the
hear.
chicken?
I don't know. You said something about a chicken. Didn't
No,
you just
it
talk
was
about
a
a
cow
chicken?
that roamed through the chicken coop.
All
broke
right.
the fence.
Next. I don't know what he's talking about, and I'm not
Very
sure if I'm
strange.
supposed to or
Yeah,
not.
what questions came in? By the way, call us
Yes.
live, 825-3245, and you send us in buku questions. I am sure that one of the people that sent in these questions that ran into me about 2 weeks ago and said, why don't you ever get my questions on? I sent you 3 questions. We'll just pick up the phone.
There you go. Call us.
And
He can
call
forget
us.
stuff. Believe me, I know.
And I know, I get so nervous I can't ask you on the phone. Well,
Okay.
oh,
Well,
another lady I owe an apology to right
Oh,
across
here we
from
go. What'd you
Mr.
do?
Arnold's. I was supposed to get there to do her landscape before we went out of town. Didn't make it.
Well,
So, but oh well.
Well, you can give her some ideas.
It's
and-
just.
All right. So you want to get to some questions?
Yeah, give me some questions.
Okay,
Yes.
here's the person
Oh, wait a minute.
says, just put in a new landscape late spring. And I have a variety of plants, including euonymus, hydrangea, barberry, and juniper. We put down weed blanket and stone for mulch and have been watering diligently. Many plants have lost their leaves and continue to do so. Is it because of the heat? Now, my first answer would say, I don't think we've had all that severe a heat so far. So what's
No,
going on here?
Well,
of course, I'm not the garden
I
doctor.
really,
so-
really strongly recommend against stone the first 2 or 3 years.
Especially
years
unless
at
you pull it
least.
away from the base
Yes,
of the plant.
and if you are going to use stone, I don't care what kind of stone it is, don't put it right up against the plant.
Because that's hot. It
Yeah,
gets
the
hot.
reflective light. It's like planting them in a concrete paved area.
Pull that stone way
Pull
back.
the stone way back. Put a ring of mulch around them so that the moisture will be held in and they
can
won't get
get in.
reflective heat.
Yep.
And so that the moisture can get in better. better. And also how the weed blanket is installed is very, very important. I don't use that perforated business. I like to use regular black visqueen, and I use a thick 4 mil, 6 mil, and I direct sloping the plastic to the plants so that all the water that falls will go to the plant.
That's good.
Not away from it, unless it's a high and dry, which is the rhododendrons and the azaleas. They don't like their crowns wet, and some other
They
plants.
need to be higher.
So I leave them high and dry and slope away from them. Then all the water that falls will find its way directly to the plant and not get wasted
Well,
over.
so this guy's problems could be a variety of things. It could be the stone too close to the plants. It could be that maybe some of his plants should have been planted higher or
Possibly,
lower.
yeah.
Or-
You gotta be very careful with the variety too. For example, in hibiscus, there are only 2 or 3 that will grow in partial shade, and only 1 that'll grow in semi-shade. All the rest of them, the hardy hibiscus, which we
well,
love
I
and
was
we're
going
going
to
to talk
say, it
about.
must be hibiscus month because I've got a few questions and some information I looked up
But
about
if you
them.
were to plant, let's say euonymus, well, that was one of the plants, right? Euonymus?
Yeah, euonymus.
There's a number of varieties of euonymus that would hate it in full sun out in the stone. They just would not like that at all. They want cool, moist, and shade. So you've got to be very careful. If you're going to plant in bright, hot, sunny environment, and you're going to put the stone around it, you've got to be very careful at the plants that you select, because most of them will not stand that. Okay, we have a caller. Yes, what can we do for you? You're on the air with the Garden
Hi.
Doctor and Mrs. Garden Doctor.
Hello, Doctor.
Hello.
I recently trimmed my shrubs, and now I'm getting brown tips. And I trimmed them when it was cool in the 70s, and they're only like 10 years old.
Yeah.
What can I do?
Well, that's not that uncommon. There's a product out there called Wilt Proof. What happens is I wear this long sleeve shirt to protect my arms from the sun. It's one of these sweat through shirts that cools you as you're wearing it. Now, if I was to take my shirt off and walk around the yard, well, in the first place, I'd get too much whistling
Oh, my gosh.
But anyway, no.
But he would get sunburnt without that cover.
My skin grafts on my back would get burnt right away. When you cut off the hardened off part of the plant and you expose that underbelly, it's not accustomed to the sun.
So you get that bright sunshine, and then
What is recommended is that you spray with Wilt Proof. There's 2 or 3 products on the market.
it's like
that
a
are
sunscreen for that, right?
Yeah, and it melts off gradually as the plants become accustomed to the sun. Now, junipers are real bad about that, especially if you cut them hard. And a 4-year-old plant would actually be easier to burn than a 50-year-old plant because there's more aggressive top growth. So you have the where you're cutting off to is much more shaded than it would be on a real thin
And it's
and
not as
sparse.
hardened off from doing it year after year after year.
Right.
So, okay.
So the important thing to do is to water that plant before you prune it next year, to water it after you prune it, and to fertilize it because you're taking away its natural ability to fertilize itself. But don't foliar feed it because that can actually add to the burn. You want to do it with a granule underneath, and then invest in a small. They have a very small container that you can get of Wilt Proof. And
Now, do you apply that so you would trim your shrub and then immediately spray that on?
yeah, you spray that on. We try to trim, like in the when it's not hot, scalding, 90-degree plus weather, but you can't always do that.
And could not trimming back as far reduce some of that, or not
yeah,
really?
but I really think that the key, if you use that Wilt Proof, I think you'll really like it, and also watering.
Water.
If the plant is wet, if it has absorbed moisture all the way up and down the column, then when you cut off, it's less likely to be stressed. So, but
Makes
I
sense.
think you did everything right, and the plants have to be pruned. It's just I always use the Wilt Proof because lately I get burned too.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you for the
Thank
call.
you.
There's one other thing that goes to, and you can hang up and I'll continue. I put a film on plants one time. I over-oiled my bars So I kept them in this oil bath in my truck. And when I would go out and trim, the first 2 or 3 shrubs that I would trim, they would burn something awful.
Oh, you're putting baby oil
Yeah, it
on
was-
them like
yeah,
we
it
used to
was-
roast. The more oil, the
Yeah.
better, right?
So, and I figured that out after a while, but I did some damage. I ended
Yeah,
up replacing
well, me
one
too.
shrub.
I've had enough skin spots cut off from oil.
But boy, let me tell you, those blades went da-da-da-da when they were in
Spray
that
that
oil
with
bath.
just a bottle, just spray it on there.
What's that?
Spray it on there with a bottle, like a spray bottle of
There
oil.
is they comes in a pump, yeah, a pump sprayer, and I think it's also, they may even have an aerosol. And one of the products is called Wilt Proof, but if you search online or go down to the library I think there's 3 different products. One of them is a new Echo thing that it's like it's Wilt Proof, but that's the only name that I can think of right now. But there are 3 of them.
You might have to do some shopping around.
Yeah,
town,
do a little
though,
research. I
'cause
know they have it in Richmond.
I don't know the local
Lowe's
stores
has
that
it.
carry anything.
I think the Fayette Feed got it in
You
for
can't
me.
count on our Walmart to carry anything.
Yeah,
so,
well,
yeah,
anyway.
that's
Well,
another
That's
try
right.
Fayette Feed first.
Yeah, try that first because they're a local supplier and we like to go there first.
All right, thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. You
Thank
do the
you.
same.
All right. Well, how about some more questions? Speaking of the hibiscus, and you've seen them around town. They have the big, giant, papery blossoms in pink or white, red, and they're all over town now. I know a lot of more people are using them. We've started using them a lot. But the question is do all of the big blossomed hibiscus I see around need to be staked every year? Because you will see them, the ones we have planted or seen or been around, we have to stake them because they're a lot of them are tall and leggy and get heavy on top.
Most of them are hybrid so that the staking is minimal. However, if you don't stake them, then they fall apart.
But then we started at home using this. We found a couple of varieties that stay more of a shrub, and they seem to be
Much
stronger at the base. They don't get as tall, but they support their own weight completely, and I've never had to stake them.
That's true, but still, like over at Yarian's there where you come into the entrance, that big pink one on the right, it is staked. You won't see it staked because my wife does an awesome job of staking. She individually threads
Well,
this thing.
I tried. The whole point is to camouflage it. You don't want a giant, ugly stake sticking out. That's the whole idea.
And you don't want to see the webbing in there.
Right. So I kind of tie it to
she
itself
uses a green
and put a stake
inside.
down the middle,
And that's just to pull it in so that it doesn't become a hazard, visual hazard right
But
where
the
it's
dwarfs have been wonderful.
There are so many varieties out. As a matter of fact, we've
Oh
got a
my gosh,
listing of
I
varieties.
do.
But while she's pulling that out, let me tell you. There is a reason why you would want to use a tropical hibiscus, and that reason is, even though it's not hardy, even though you're buying it and you're going to throw it away in the fall or bring it into the house, which we do very, very successfully if you go through the right procedure to bring it into the house.
If you're not
But
me.
There's a reason. There's a reason why a tropical hibiscus is preferred in some usage, and that is that the day you buy it in late spring, after all danger of frost is gone, the day you buy it, it's going to be blooming.
Right.
And it's going to bloom all the way through the whole
Right.
entire season if you maintain fertilizer and water on it. It's going to keep blooming
Not to
and
mention the
blooming.
assortment of color, just like with
Oh,
annuals.
they are insane.
You buy
the colors.
annuals because
Insane.
of the variety of color and color combinations that you just can't get in your returning perennials. It's kind of the same difference.
I saw in hybrid hibiscus, I saw a blue, an actual blue, and then there was one that had so many colors in it,
Right.
it looks like a crepe paper that you would use at a party.
And when I first moved here, you'd never heard of hibiscus. And I said, Florida, they were all everywhere in Florida. And I finally showed you. You said, Rosa Sharon? No, that's not quite it either.
Well, actually,
but
Rosa Sharon
it
is
is,
a hibiscus,
but that wasn't-
but it's different.
I was always used to the plain old red
Yep.
hibiscus with the bright green leaves.
And anything my wife asks for, she gets.
So
So I
he
looked around and I
discovered
found her
hibiscus,
hibiscus.
yep.
And then we started planting them everywhere. And there is quite a list. Read briefly there.
Oh, just some of the names of them. I mean, for the hardy ones.
But first, this one here, this Bob Fleming.
Yes, it's called Robert
This
Fleming.
tells you
which
about
I like.
where these hardy hibiscus came from.
Because our neighbor, of course, who's passed away now, Robert Fleming, Bob Fleming, and there's actually one called Robert Fleming. It's a hardy hibiscus named after one of the Preeminent Rose of Sharon hybridizers, you say that. Hybridizers of the last century. All three brothers, not one of them above 5'5" in height, were often compared to garden gnomes, as they all had a funny disposition and a sense of humor and an amazingly green thumb. But the Robert Fleming is the reddest yet of the non-tropical. Garden tested for 10 years, blah, blah, blah. Awesome plant.
And there are a bunch of other ones. Let me tell you about two of them, and then she can give you a couple more lists.
I mean, 10-inch flowers.
Until one of the hybridizers, one of the brothers, passed away, there were two that they kept for themselves because they could not agree upon a name. And that is the Lady Baltimore and the Lord Baltimore. And those two, after one of the hybridizers' brothers died, there was three brothers, right?
Three,
and
yes.
Two of them were stayed single all their lives, and they just could not agree upon this, so they never did release it to the public until after one died, and that's the Lord and the Lady Baltimore, which we have at our house.
Now
then there's one that's what?
Well, I was just reading this. Apparently, I've read this for the first time. But we've always talked about don't give up on your hibiscus because they're like the last thing to come.
They
well,
don't
it
even
says
start.
right here, it is not uncommon for first-time growers to think their hibiscus has died from winter kill. The stems are not true wood and die to the ground every winter, and they are also
they almost completely disappear. You don't even find a trace, so you think it's died.
And it says they are also one of the last plants to sprout in the spring. They are quite hardy, however, and grow quickly into 3 to 6 foot bushes. And that's true. We always say don't give up on them. You think they're dead, people pull them up, but they're not. They're the last thing to come to life.
You want to put this now. There are how many varieties? What, a dozen of them? There's pink. There's white with red centers. There's one that's got 12-inch blossoms. There's a gorgeous one that has red foliage, and then it turns green in the starts green, turns red, and then in the fall it's bright yellow. And they look like a maple leaf. The foliage on them.
Yeah, the foliage is all red. It's awesome in the garden. Really.
There's two of those. There's the copper something.
I know I've got one in my front yard, and it's got the reddish stem, real thick stem, reddish leaves, and it's taller than me, making flowers.
I made some errors in where I placed them, and you should avoid these errors. Read very carefully.
What's outside my window? What could be wrong with that?
Well, not that one. That one's in a good place, but the ones back in the garden, as the trees grew around it,
yeah, that's
and
true.
more and more shade, they're trying to grow out from under, and they're very spindly.
But some of these
and
are
they
just
require
awesome.
more staking because they're not out in full sun. In the full sun, they're very robust.
Hey, do we have one of these? It's called Crown Jewels.
No, the Crown Jewel we haven't gotten yet.
Fantasia?
No.
9-inch ruffled blooms. There's one called Fireball.
Fireball we
red.
have, and it's fantastic.
12-inch blossom.
And we have a caller, so we're going to go directly
Great.
to you on
Hello.
the phones. That's what we're here for. What can we do for you?
Yes, I've got some grass for a sowed.
Yes.
A long spot of grass along the house. I've got about 3 or 4 big brown spots and it just died. I wonder what happened to it.
How big are the brown spots?
Well, it's a dead spot. I mean, the grass is dead.
So is it as big as a wash tub or smaller?
Big as a wash bowl.
Okay.
I mean, like a wash pan around.
Okay. Coffee can, 5-pound can.
Well, it's bigger than that, yeah.
Oh, it's bigger than that. Okay. Well, the reason that I asked that is because the male dog will oftentimes, if you disturb the ground, if you put a new soil out, if you change something in your environment,
Here come the dogs.
a male dog in the area will come by to mark that area, and when they do, they burn because the urine contains too much nitrogen. It just burns a hole.
But if it's not that,
If it's not that, then it probably is because you put down too much seed. Now, if you have a square foot of ground and a piece of ground this big, and you're throwing some seed down there, there should only be about 25 seeds maximum in that area. Actually, and if you put more than that, what happens is each one of those seeds has to take moisture, take fertilizer, and breathe. And when they're doing that so close together, they starve each other. And
so more is not always better.
More is definitely bad. Now the other thing is I would not use bluegrass, and because we're getting into the heat here, this season that we're into now, if you put a piece of newspaper over the top of your seed, if it's freshly sown, put the newspaper over there and throw a little bit of sand or peat moss or something just to hold the newspaper down. The newspaper will actually dissolve as the seeds are growing, and it keeps them in the shade. It protects them for their first 5 or 7 days, which is vitally important. And you only need one thickness of newspaper. And that, if it's a small area, if I'm doing a patch, that's what I do. As a matter of fact, if you buy the product that's called Lawn Patch, all it is ground up newspapers with seeds in it. And that's all you're putting down.
Now, isn't it possible that maybe in her lawn that she sowed, or that area, that the soil wasn't consistent and maybe was different in a couple of spots that didn't allow it to stay wet or stay dry?
It's possible.
Or whatever?
A lot of things are possible. It could be that. Why did the grass die there in the first place? Do you know why?
Before it was sowed?
No, I don't. It's the reason I'm trying to find out why it died.
Yeah, but why was the grass wasn't there, right?
Ever?
So
No, well, I had flowers there, and I took them up and tilled it up and then sowed the grass.
Okay, so it should be good soil. Should be good
Yeah,
ground.
it's good soil.
Okay, and it's in the sun.
But yes, and my
Okay.
son sowed it for me. Yeah.
I would imagine that you probably put down too much seed. That is the biggest problem that I find. You can even go out there and look, and you can see that there's a whole bunch of seed in that little area, but out away from that some, where the grass is actually growing, there's not near as much seed. Now, I would strongly recommend, if you're going to reseed
I was
those
going
little
to say,
patches.
is it too late, or can you
Oh,
still
no,
reseed
no,
that?
no. We're
Okay.
seed up until the end of August, but after, about the first week of September, that's really pushing it. And with this drought coming on, you got to water the darn stuff all the time. But I would suggest that you put sphagnum peat moss, the brown peat moss. Throw a little small amount of seed down there. Cover it up with about a half an inch
And water.
of sphagnum
Yes,
peat
I've
moss.
been
What's
I've been
that?
watering it. Yes,
Yeah, the brown peat moss, the sphagnum peat moss is very, very important. But I think you probably just put more seed than was possible to germinate and grow. It probably just starved itself.
Oh, okay.
I
Well,
think
thank
that
you.
if that's not the problem, then you call us back and we'll figure it out. Now,
How late did you say you could sow it in the fall?
well, the first week of September is the last early sowing date. Then what you do is you wait until after Thanksgiving, and you can sow all the way through the winter. Really, all you got to do is just keep the birds off in it. So you can sow in the dormant season anytime, which is really good because you get all those fall rains and winter rains, and then in the spring up pops a brand new lawn. Does a really nice job. Now, something else to consider that is not near as expensive as people think it is sodding. And in a small area where you've just got a little patch, you unroll a piece of sod, you mark a line along the side of it, roll it back up, and just take up a little bit of the debris that's in the way,
Instant grass.
and throw a little sphagnum peat. I love this brown peat
No
moss.
waiting. You have
Unroll
grass
it,
immediately.
stomp it down, and especially if you get the fescues. I do not like bluegrass in this area. Fescue does a beautiful job, and it's not very expensive at all. They have sod by the piece available a lot of times at Lowell's, but the local grower here is Moster. And Moster always has
Nice people, fair
really
people.
good people, and it's not very expensive.
But
We
if you
have
want
done
instant grass, don't want to wait and go through all that. That is a route to go. I like that.
very inexpensive. Yes, thank you for your call. We appreciate it very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Have a wonderful day.
You know, spending my whole life mostly in Florida before I moved here, I had never heard of seeding grass, putting down grass seed and growing seed. Everybody buys sod. You build a house or whatever it is you do.
Wow,
you have the sod delivered. They roll it out, instant lawn. You keep it watered, and you know. And
I was shocked to see we have sowed some massive, sodded some massive places 5 and 7 semi-loads of sod and all put down by hand. And I'm very fussy about every crease, every stitch.
Every seam. It's
they've
gotta
all got to be
match
pulled
just
up and
right.
rolled, and my ground has to be perfectly graded and everything, because once you put it down, that's
Yeah.
it. That's your lawn.
It is.
and it's going to be permanent. But along comes this new device. It's this giant. It's like carpet. And they unroll it with a machine, a device. They
wow.
take these giant rolls, which are 6 foot across, I think, and I believe that they're 20 foot long.
Oh, my.
And they pick this roll up, and there's
your lawn.
you talk about instant lawn. Holy mackerel! And they bring semi-loads of this stuff, and boom, 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 and it's.
However,
it's-
what did we learn one year? Not to install sod when it's over 90 degrees and
Oh,
it's
my
going
gosh,
to stay
what a
there.
disaster.
Because you can water it. You're keeping it alive like a
That was
flower
in
in
the
a
drought
vase.
3 years ago. We tried
They
everything in my
said,
power.
And this is how Moster explained it. It's like a flower in a vase. You're giving it water to survive, but it's never going to grow roots. And that's what happened.
And it just, yeah.
It never grew roots.
And
It-
we kept it alive,
Watering
and then
it, yeah.
comes fall, and we stopped watering it, it all died.
And because there was no roots. And they
And we
said
put it in
because
again, and it did the same thing.
you should not plant if it's going to be or put down sod if
Yeah.
it's going to be over 90 degrees
Right.
for a week, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So, live and
I was
learn.
just at a friend's house, and we were cleaning up some mess for a neighbor, and he said, "Come on over here, I want to show you something." And I walked around, and I said, "Oh, what a beautiful backyard." Matter of fact, I'm going to try to video it. And he said, "How do I get rid of this?"
Get rid of what?
He wanted to get rid of it.
The
and I'm
whole
standing
backyard?
There. This is a beautiful backyard. It's got waterfalls and fountains, and
Was he just want some
and
rollout
this
grass
manicured ivy, which is a real nuisance. And what it was is we were standing on
a lot of work.
zoysia grass.
Oh.
And zoysia, by the way, is very, very difficult to get rid of. Now, there are products on the market now that do a better job, but I tried it in the past. We did a three-step spray. We sprayed it, we mowed it off right down to the nub. We waited till it resprouted. We did it again. Then we waited till it resprouted, which took, this was a time-consuming all summer situation. Sprayed it again, and there was traces of it along the edge and in the flower beds. There was some under some rocks, and it came back.
Oh, my.
And not all over the yard, but in patches. Then it grew here and it grew there, and we had already sodded right over the top of it, and it just came right up through the sod and reinfested. But there are some new products that do an exceptional job.
I've got to say, now that you've cut your hair, I've come up with some jokes for you, some bald jokes.
Oh, come on!
And they are called Bald Bill, but I'm going to say Bald Harold. So why did Bald Harold put a rabbit on his head?
I don't know.
Because
I could. No, I'm not going to go.
Because he wanted a head of hair.
there. Oh, Jesus.
Get it?
Yeah, I get it.
You get it? You want another one?
Now you better be better than that one. Give me another one.
Bald Harold's wife nagged him so much, his scalp turned gray.
I can believe that.
You see?
I can
Oh,
relate to
good.
that. Yes.
But here's my favorite one. Let's see. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it?
Yeah, no, it's the favorite one's gone. We're going to the next.
Oh, Bald Harold doesn't call it baldness. He considers it a cure for his dandruff.
Alrighty, here we go. Now see, watch the shine. Now, if I had hair, I wouldn't have that shine. See, they have to worry about this
They
shine
say your
all the time.
hairline is not receding. Your face is growing.
That's true. They're very true. What's the next question?
Okay.
God, I
next
shave I take all of the hair off, and I still have to. Put
Oh,
up with
okay. This is about some grasses, and I know you like the grasses, like to use a lot of those.
I like
This lady's got
grasses.
a lady, man, I'm not sure. I have 5 different varieties of tall landscape grasses. I don't know what they are, but why do 3 of them fall over and the others don't? Also, 2 of the grasses are dying out in the middle. What can I do?
Okay, they die out in the middle. That's just the way the grasses are. You're supposed to dig them up about every 3 to 5 years, 5 to 7 years minimum. Dig them up. The center of the clump will be dead. You take all of what's around it, you dig that back out, you put in some new fresh soil, you replant a quarter of it, give the other 3/4 away or do whatever you want to with them. But that's the way the grass is what you're supposed to do with it. Now, the other thing is falling over.
That's
You
the
probably put it
variety,
in
isn't it?
too good of a soil.
Oh.
If the soil is too good, the plants will fall over. Okay?
Why?
Because they don't like some plants don't like real fertile ground. They like poor ground.
Well, don't
They grow better in-
grasses kind of want
They like it moist.
hard?
They
okay.
like it. They like it dry.
Dry
Sorry,
and
dry.
just cruddy soil. They'll grow
Cruddy
anywhere.
soil. They like clay soil, and they don't like too much fertilizer. They do like to be watered on occasion, but if it's too good a
They're
ground,
fairly tropical,
they'll fall
and they're
apart.
pretty much take care of themselves for the most
We
part.
have a video that we want to show you that
Yeah.
we did manage with this
Off
little
the little chip there.
chipperoo right
Let's
here.
see if we can't
And
watch
if
that.
we can roll that bean footage,
roll
we'll
that
take a
beautiful
break
bean
here for a minute.
footage.
Hello and welcome to the Garden Doctor Outtakes. We're doing some homework today. We're at the house of Mr. and Mrs. Garden Doctor. I would interview them, but they're me, and her. She's behind the camera, so can't interview those. We're going to talk about the plants that are in bloom today, right now, at the home here, at our home, not the home, our home, and it's the 25th or 26th of August, and so that you know what plants are fall bloomers, because we get that question often. One of my favorite plants is the hardy hibiscus, and they are very, very hardy. Now, not all hibiscus, the tropicals, of course, are not, but this one here happens to be one of my favorite. It has a purple foliage, has a beautiful, beautiful, almost a bled out plum type blossom. Back in behind there is a dwarf. We have a dwarf hibiscus back in the back. My wife is going to pan around. We have a Lord Baltimore that is a giant. It's a 6.5 to 7 foot tall. And then on the far right hand side of that is another very large hibiscus. And we're going to go to the backyard where we're going to have even more hibiscus that we're going to show you, plus some other blooming plants. Hello, we moved from the front yard to the backyard. Down here is the beautiful plumbago, which is also blooms down in Florida, where my wife spent a great deal of her time. If you can zoom in right over there, you can see one of the most beautiful creatures, and there's one right over in here. There's about 4 or 5 working here. They are a hummingbird moth, and they're just an absolute fantastic creature to watch, and we have a great number of them here in our yard. Now, back in behind here is the hosta, and a lot of hosta bloom this time of the year. This one here happens to be guacamole. It's kind of faded out because the blossom is just about done, and the plant foliage is as well. If you'll swing around over to here, the Chiara japonica. I love the Chiara japonica. It's blooming right now, and it blooms most of the summer, as a matter of fact. It likes it in partial shade, does a real nice job. And in behind here, butterfly bushes. They come in semi-dwarf, in super dwarf, and in the standards. Over in the back here, we have the white, the lavender. I have every color in my wife's butterfly garden right in here. Now, there's also blooming this time of the year is the bluebeard, and we'll see if we can find you one of those down around the other side. Hello, everybody. Another hibiscus that's in my wife's garden back here. This is the soft pink one, and then the dark red one. Now, the blossoms only last one day. They're paper thin. If they get rain on them, they fall off, but there's hundreds and hundreds more coming in behind them. The more shade they get, the later they blossom, and you don't want to get in a hurry with the hibiscus because they're very, very late to come up. So if you don't see them resprouting in the spring, wait until the end of June, because it takes them sometimes that long. This is an absolutely gorgeous and very fragrant in the hosta family. And then we have some more small hosta that are blooming down here. The more dwarfs that are blooming white. Behind my wife is the blue hosta now blossoming, and then of course the black-eyed Susans, and the coneflower is still in bloom right now. On the side yard now, bluebeard here, getting ready to go into a friend's yard, and one of the dwarf Luna hibiscus just now coming into blossom. They've got about 4 or 5 colors. They only get about 3 or 4 foot tall. Real nice ones. One of the hybrid coneflower, echinacea. This is a real nice one that has a double blossom. Likes to fade in the different colors. So then also down
over here. Just because something is not in bloom does not mean that it's not colorful this time of the year. The silver mound, and this is silver king. Some of the grasses are just now starting to plume. And one of the plants that we're going to show you here in just a second is the Rose of Sharon Althea, which is also in the hibiscus family that is currently blooming. Okay, now we're in the side yard of the Mr. and Mrs. Garden Doctor, and here is the Rose of Sharon Althea, one of the colors. It comes in many colors. There's new blushes that are out. There's semi-dwarfs, dwarfs. There's all types of the Rose of Sharon. Here's one of the lavender purples. This one is one of my favorites. And then there's one that's pure white. This here is the Clematis bridal wreath, and does a fabulous job this time of the year. Sweet pea vine. Sweet pea vine, a very old vine, but it is gorgeous once you get it established. Now this wants to be somewhat of a weed because I've let it go, but now over here, way up tall, just now coming into bloom, is a false pampas grass. Isn't that a beautiful thing to behold? We're in the front side yard now. Back behind me, a lot of the grasses are coming into full plume right about now. But this is something we're very proud of. We had fantastic cherries this year. Didn't get any of them. The birds got the cherries. We had some tremendous peaches. I think we got 4 or 5 of those. The deer decided that the peaches were just too succulent for us to have. And now we have this gorgeous apple tree about to provide us with a whole bunch of apples and applesauce and apple fruit. And by the way, the Constancers had put a bag of apples out for me to pick up, and I completely forgot about them. I must apologize publicly, and I will do much better the next time. As a matter of fact, I'm going to try to go by there tomorrow morning, first thing, and see if there's still a bag out there. Thank you very much for watching the Garden Doctor Outtakes, and we hope to see you somewhere in your backyard.
Hello and welcome back.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Did you see the director at the tail end there crawl across the screen?
You like that, huh?
Real
special effects. That was a real insect.
A real insect that we had to, bait and get him to go.
I
across
trained
it.
him to do just
That's
that.
right.
I thought it was cute.
Did a fine job.
Right.
We were answering some questions.
Yes.
And there were a lot coming in. Did we have a caller? No. So we're good. Okay.
All right.
Moving right along.
One of the questions was, why are so many trees that have been planted on public land leaning, dying, looking bad, going into fall color early? And why does anyone think it is necessary to put such a giant mound of mulch under them?
This mulch business, I think I know who asked that question.
But I have a theory about this, too.
What?
Well, I don't think that they're necessarily planted and then there's a giant mound of mulch.
Okay, your time's up.
I think the tree is planted too high out of the ground on a mound, which they think looks better, and then that mound is just covered with mulch.
Yeah, when you go into some of these parking lots or whatever, the curbs are here, then they mound up and put a tree up on top of it. That is really ignorant. That's just not smart, because the water is going to be shed off.
If anything, there should be a depression in a canal, a
the
moat
opposite
to catch
would be
the
better.
water.
Exactly, yes. And it doesn't make any sense because the roots get frozen. It's much easier to die from drought. It's much easier to be blown over in the wind. Damage is going to happen all around. Now, if it is a plant that should be planted high and dry, you don't want to mound up against it. In that environment, you'd have to put it up on a hill where
for some reason, it seems the standard seems to think that is attractive, because I see it in shopping centers,
it's
strip
just
centers,
wrong.
everywhere.
I don't know who started it. I don't know why, but it's just wrong. And most of those plants die. They do not survive well. Their roots are all on top of the ground. They're very poor in appearance. Now, part of the problem in public areas when you put trees out is they're just going to get mowed into and damaged, and nobody stakes trees anymore. But I did notice that Rushville staked their trees, and when I was over in Hamilton, they staked their trees, because it's very, very important for a young tree to be held in the proper position.
And is that why they're leaning? And
yeah, that's why they're leaning. Look at the ones out the soccer field and all over, anywhere where they did not use stakes. it is extremely difficult for these young trees to stay in one location. Now, without tipping around, people are going to grab a hold of them and everything else. You can do it with just one stake, though. You don't need the cables and the ropes and all of this kind of stuff and put a choker hold on them. One stake will do it. But part of the problem is in the procedure that is used to plant. And that is you should dig the hole, fill the hole back up so that you know that the plant is going to be at grade level, at ground level. If it grew here, that's where the top of the soil all the way around it should be, right back in that location. Now, you put the ball in and you fill that full of water and let that ball settle in.
Kind of mud it in.
Mud it in and take a position that you can correct in this when it's not filled up yet, and fill it up with water again and mud it into a set position. Then backfill it, tamp it real good, and mud it in a second time. Only come up about 3/4 of the way. Mud it in a second time.
So it's going to settle and smush and get all the way down where it needs to go while it's wet.
And it's going to be in that. Don't force it, because once you've planted this thing, if you try to tip it, you're going to break loose its root structure. But if you can settle the ball, and you've done a good job of purchasing the tree, and it's a good solid ball, and you get it settled into the mud,
it's pretty much going to stay there.
It's going to stay pretty much there. But now the problem is to protect it from the weed eaters and the lawnmowers and the children want to hang in the tree.
I understand a big mow ring with mulch so that the mowers won't hit it.
That's what you need. You need a mow ring around it with the mulch maybe mounded up about this high to keep the weeds down, out away from the tree, not up against the tree, because that causes a lot of damage. Too much heat, too much moisture, too much insect, perfect environment for insects. So go out around the drip line, get the mowers away from the trunk, put your mulch out there, a little mound of mulch if you have to mound this stuff. And for heaven's sakes, don't put rock around it, because you're just going to create more of a problem. But even then, I still would recommend a single stake. And that is, if your tree is like this, you put the stake in at an angle, like this, and you put something that between the tree and the stake to protect the tree, and then wrap around it so that it stays in that position. That should be on there for about 2 years until the plant is really in a stable condition.
And
now, part of the reason these things are dying, well, you won't run into it if it's got a stake around it. It's got that mound around it.
Right, it's going to stay
put. Get people the heck away from it. But part of the reason they're dying is because they're not being watered. We just stick them out and we think they're going to grow, which is utter nonsense. We've cut all of these water roots, pick the thing up and take it and put it in a new environment, and then no water. You can't do that. They have to be watered. Also, they have to be put in the ground immediately, not weeks or two later. So anyway, we have, what did you say? I didn't catch that.
We've got a few minutes left, but you want me to hit a couple more of these questions that have come in?
Please.
Here's one. It says, my nieces and nephews returned from my yard with their white tennis shoes covered with a reddish dust that was very hard to get off. Should I be concerned about their health?
Yes, I'd be concerned about their mental health.
Are they talking about?
But no.
I don't know what that
it's
is.
aliens. They leave this stuff so they can track us.
It's angel dust.
Yeah, and they go into our ear. It's fairy dust. And
what is it?
Actually, what it is red thread. The foliage breaks out in a fungus on the grass, and sometimes when you mow, it'll just go poof up in the air. And when you walk through it, it'll do the same thing. And
kidding.
That's how the spore is spread, by attaching itself to you or to whatever it goes through.
Animals.
And that is the reason why we disinfect, clean underneath your lawnmower when it's not running.
Yeah, good idea.
Disinfect. Not where it's going to get run down, where you're going to walk in it and walk inside a house. I got in big trouble.
Is the best disinfectant
Yeah,
in the
I know,
world.
but I got in big trouble because I had this guy bleach the underside of his lawnmower, and he did.
If you
and
men
it got
would learn to wipe your shoes, we wouldn't have all these problems.
well, anyway, just don't put carpet down. Let him walk through the house.
All right, let him walk through the house then.
What did he say? How many minutes?
He says we have 5 minutes left. That's plenty of time.
That's
we can talk
plenty of
about all
time.
kinds of
What do
stuff.
you got?
Okay, let's see. I have a giant hole in my tree, which I just discovered having to go up the tree on a ladder to retrieve my daughter's cat. Which
Who does that?
That sounds fake. Nobody really goes up a
Who
tree
does
for the
that?
cat.
Really goes
If
getting
the
the
cat's
cat?
that stupid, it'll come back down.
Oh,
Anyway.
wow.
It looks like a limb died, but I can see into the tree. Otherwise, the tree appears very healthy and has never shown any signs of decline. So is the hole a good thing?
Yeah, for raccoons or possums or
Good for what?
insects.
I don't know.
No. The problem, number one problem is the water is going to get in there, and in the
Rot.
wintertime it's going to freeze, and then the water has to expand, and it's going to split that tree.
We have a tree doing that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of trees doing that all over town because we have stressed trees that are diseased.
We lost
and have
a limb, it had a hole,
Right.
it grew snakes. It grew-
no, the snakes just crawl up
it's
in
the
there.
snake
But
tree, we call it.
This,
but-
no, it's not a good thing. You have to prevent the water from getting in there. They used to put concrete in there. That's okay if you want to fill the hole up, but
Yeah,
if
okay.
you don't call me to cut the tree down.
concrete.
It's a real pain. But if in some way you can seal over that, we get some 1/4 inch exterior plywood, paint it gray so that it disappears, and then just affix it over the top of that and let the tree heal underneath if it's going to. But you can fill it full of concrete. Put some webbing in there so that you're just mortaring that area, and make sure that it's sealed with a little bit of tar or something so the water can't get in around behind it. Preventing water from getting in is the number one problem.
Now, there is one other question we've kind of saved
If
till
it's
the
rotten
last
on the
here.
inside, that tree could be very dangerous. So check it to see if it get up there and dig down in there some, because you don't want a rotten tree suspended out over your house or something
Bad
with
idea.
these bad winds. Yep.
One of the questions I've kind of been saving till the end of the show is because it's a little bit of a hard topic for both of us. Someone said they had heard us say on the last show that our little Tiny dog was sick, and how is she doing now? Yes, Tiny, as you know, super mighty Tiny dog. She's in every intro. Has been on the show several times. We've had her 10 years now, and we're not sure how old she was when we adopted her. She has congestive heart failure, basically an enlarged heart. It's very normal in her breed, at her age. She's having a lot of problems, but she is on medication for her blood pressure. She now is actually on Lasix as a water pill to help control fluid in the lungs, blood pressure. She's not getting around too good. We kind of have to pick her up, take her in and out to do her business and up and down on the couch, but she is very comfortable, doesn't seem to be hurting at all whatsoever, and we have accepted that our beloved dog is probably on her last leg, so to speak, but we're taking real good care of her, and she's always been a part of the show and of course a part of our life, and most people who know us, our friends and family, know what a big part of our life she is. And so yeah, we're dealing with we've spent a few nights without sleep, him up all night, and we're tag teaming each other to just because she's not breathing right or what have you. So we're keeping an eye on her and trying to make her as comfortable as possible, and I will never let her suffer a minute if I have to ever make that decision. Not my best friend. So that's how she's doing.
Thank you very much.
It's a tough topic.
Yeah, it's a tough topic. It really is, and I'm glad you waited until the end to bring it up.
It's hard to
What
lose
else you
your
got
best
there?
friend.
Give me a question quick, please.
Okay, some thornless blackberry vines 3 years ago they got at your suggestion. Part of the fruit this year dried up. Some was breaking the vines. Why? And am I supposed to spray these with fruit tree spray?
If you don't see a problem, don't spray. There's really no reason to just willy-nilly go out there and spray.
So what's with
we
the
have an
drying
apple
up?
tree that the fruit is not perfect
That's
on it, if
ugly,
you saw
but,
in that
you
video.
know,
And there are insects on it. We even have a tent caterpillar on the back side of it that I'm going to prune out and
No,
do
that's not
exactly
hurting
what I
anything,
suggested.
so.
But I did not spray that tree. I do not spray that tree. In the first place, our children, two of my son and his wife and family are vegans, and they're also naturalists and
certainly not berries that you
organic
pick and eat right
yeah,
now, you know.
definitely not. So,
But why are they drying up
Oh,
at
the
the
reason
ends?
is probably because the vine on that end just got very dry.
There you
You
go.
have to have uniform water on berries.
But ours have been awesome. The blackberries
We had them
big
dry
as your
up
thumb.
out at the front because
Oh,
they
they
were
were.
not watered. Yeah, while we were gone, they picked about 5 or
I
6
don't know.
gallons
And the raspberries are coming on still.
Yes. Oh yeah. Well, we have the ever.
I made him a raspberry pie.
She
I really
certainly did.
Made
She
my own
made
crust
me
and
a
everything. Yes, I
raspberry
did.
pie.
And I'm no cook, that's for sure. All right.
We thank you very
Wrap
much
it
for
up.
watching the show. We appreciate all of your questions, comments,
you.
and we like it when you stop us on the street. We really do. You do it again, though, and I'm calling the police because you're chasing me down.
Thank
you
you.
again, and we'll be back.
The Garden Doctor.